Hey, today I'm sharing my latest secrets from a Facebook ads perspective. A lot has changed over the last few months or even in the last few weeks when it comes to detailed targeting. So I'm going to show you the latest advice I'm giving to clients and people that I'm talking to in terms of reviewing their ads, optimizing them, getting even better results. And importantly, those people that are coming to me and saying my costs are too high, my ads aren't working. How can I fix this? And how can I get some leads coming in through the door? So if this is the first time joining one of my lives, I'm Brian Czekanski, and I work with coaches that are overwhelmed and burned out by social media marketing on a day-by-day basis. I help them automate their marketing and start getting the best clients coming to them by something that I call full confidence ads. So go to fullconfidenceads.com and you'll see all about it. It's basically a soup to nuts free video training that walks you through number one, how to start running Facebook ads that really captivate the specific audience that you really want to go after and start attracting them. How to actually go into Business Manager and how to not be stressed and overwhelmed on what buttons to push and what you should do now that the Apple iOS update has come through to get the best results. And then once your ads are running, how to optimize them to get even better results over time, how to interpret the data that you're getting back from Facebook to know what tweaks you make, whether it's the image, the ad copy, the headline, whatever it is along the way. And also thinking about like post that click, what is that secondary? What should you have on the landing page? What strategy should you have to ensure that you're having a profitable ads coming through on day one and not having a huge expense that you're just struggling to account for as we go through. So this kind of comes through. This is something I've been thinking about. I talk to a lot of coaches on a day-by-day basis. And one of the key things that they tell me all the time is that Facebook ads just seem too complex. Like it just seems overwhelming. Like I obviously want all the benefits that come through from Facebook ads. I want those automated leads. I want people coming to me. But every time I run ads, all I'm left with is this huge bill and nothing to show for it. Or I've hired somebody and they've promised the world and they tend, to under deliver. Or, I got leads for a while, but since the Apple iOS update, my cost per lead has gone up so much that again, my ads aren't even getting close to break even, much less getting profitable. So this is the one thing, this is the first thing that I tell them and kind of walk them through what I'm going to walk you through today. I've tried to simplify the process as much as possible to let you know, if you are thinking about running ads for the first time, or again, if you have ads running right now that aren't quite meeting your standards in terms of that cost per lead or cost per conversion that is coming through, obviously we should always be focused on kind of that conversion versus the cost per lead that you're seeing in Business Manager. But I'll kind of walk you through. This is what I go out and, kind of the first thing, like what is the lens that I would go out there and kind of look at their ads and how do we optimize them and make them even better over time. So let's kind of take a look. Again, I'm just going to share my screen and show you just a way to kind of think about it. So I'll go through number one, like what I see most often in terms of what's working wrong. So what this is Eugene Schwartz wrote a very interesting and one of those copywriting books that I refer to again and again and again called Breakthrough Advertising. And then another book called Great Leads kind of took a lot of the principles from Eugene Schwartz and made it a little bit more digestible. And this graphic is from Derek Johansson, who has a program called Copy Hour. So I'm using his graphic to kind of just summarize and walk you through how to really think about your ads and how to think, again, if you're getting great results right now, how do we maybe optimize them a little bit more? So the first thing is kind of really taking it from an audience perspective. Like anytime a business owner starts to run ads for the first time, they just think about like, what is my offer? How can I just put my offer out there and see how many people take me up on it? And what that leads to is just, it's not an audience focused ad. And again, you always have to have your end customer in mind, thinking about like, what do they want? What language do they use? How can you kind of get into the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of your audience? So this is an easy way to do it. I'm going to walk you through each of the steps here. But the general idea is on the left hand, like on the screen here, in terms of most aware, those are people that have been following you for a while. These are generally people, past customers. They're on your email list. They've been following you on your social media. They get their emails from you. Like they have a good idea of who you are. And the problem is that most people start that messaging, even though they're going to Facebook and they're going out to people that have never heard of them before. They create ads that are almost more targeted to those people that have been following them for years upon years upon years. So what they kind of miss out on is they just put out their offer. They say, okay, I've got this brand new membership. It's going to be, $27 a month. And they're hoping that low price, like all they try and do is kind of compete on price, and they hope that low price gets a lot of people in the door, and then they're surprised that they don't get the results they're looking for. And the reason is that it's just like, again, I'll use that dating analogy. It's like going on a first date and proposing right away in the first 30 seconds. Like, for that customer that has never heard of you before or haven't seen your offer, even having a very low price doesn't really mean anything to them, because they don't know what value, they don't really know what makes that up. So just because somebody throws out a low number doesn't mean that everybody's going to jump at it along the way. You really have to, number one, start to introduce yourself, do some dating along the way. And that's really what you have to do in the ad. Like, give them some benefits, like talk about the end outcome that they want the most, or introduce yourself and provide some credibility, share some success stories. And that's really what we're going to try and do across the different awareness spectrums. I'm going to introduce them, but really kind of associate different ad frameworks to the ones that really make sense. So you can kind of go through and really think about, like, strategically, like, okay, where does my audience sit? And based on where my audience sit, here's the specific ad frameworks that I should be testing out to ensure that I'm getting the type of results that I'm looking for along the way. So let's kind of just go through them. Again, those most aware are people that have been following you for a while. They know who your brand is. They might have been past clients, so they're ready, willing, and able. The know, like, and trust factor is already established. If we go on the other side, these are people that have never heard of you before. They've never been introduced to you. They haven't seen an ad before. They're not aware of what your offer is, what value you bring, all that kind of stuff. So you're kind of starting from a complete stranger point of view. And then in the middle, you have various different people within your audience that fall within different spectrums. And I'll go through each of them. But, thinking about problem areas, like, okay, like maybe somebody is just now getting a sense for, like, okay, this is the problem that I'm dealing with. Maybe they just got a diagnosis from one of their doctors and they're not quite sure what is the right solution, or haven't even done the research or asked for recommendations yet. So, they're just kind of, they're aware of what they're dealing with. They just haven't found or even started to look at those solutions. As you move along, again, in the solution aware, they're starting to look at those options. They're just not sure which one is the right for them. And then product aware is, okay, they've done some research. They've kind of narrowed down their list. You've done some advertising in front of them, so they know your brand. They know they're just not sure if you are the best product or solution for them along the way to get to that most aware as we go through. So there's a series of questions. So the question becomes, like, how do I kind of narrow down in terms of who my audience is? Again, most people start off with ads that are more tailored towards that most aware audience, going to a cold audience on Facebook. And it's no surprise that their ads either don't work or their costs are so high that they eventually have to turn them off. So what we have to do is really push yourself and think about, from an audience perspective, more often than not, you're going to be closer to this side, especially going out to Facebook where an audience has never heard of you. So you're going to, if all things being equal, you're going to start out unaware and then kind of really decide, like, where on this side of the screen, where on this right side of the screen does my audience fall, and then really testing out specific frameworks that I'll go into in just a second that will make all these, really capture your audience's attention, but kind of put your offer in the right perspective so they get to your landing page or webinar, whatever it is, in the right order, and you can kind of, speak their language along the way. So again, thinking about it from maybe a solution aware, problem aware, but again, just assume, like, despite how much, social media marketing and all those things that you've done, maybe you have a book out there, you have to really assume that your audience has never heard of you before, especially if you're marketing on Facebook for the very first time. Assume that they've never heard of you. So you obviously have to do some introductory type of work. And again, I'll explain how to do that in terms of the frameworks, but let's just kind of start with a couple of key questions in terms of figuring out, like, where does my audience sit? So again, this is like, what does my prospect already know? Like, this is kind of the function of, like, okay, let's go out to our audience again on Facebook, and what do they know about you or your company? Again, if you haven't advertised on Facebook before, or you've only put a few $1,000s on Facebook, your audience probably has no idea who you are. So again, that already sets the stage for like you're going to be on the right side of the chart that we just saw. Are they familiar with you and your brand? Have they heard of you personally? So again, those people, like, again, unless you're kind of advertising directly just to your email list or past clients, just assume for these questions that they've never heard of you before, especially if you haven't done, if unless you're Coca-Cola, Apple, Nike, one of those huge brands that is so well known. Even if you haven't done a lot of Facebook advertising, if you haven't, then you have to just assume the question to these is no, and that pushes you more to the right side of the screen. And then what do they know about your product? Have they seen it promoted before? Again, like thinking about like maybe you haven't had a lot of people sign up in terms of clients or products, or maybe it's a brand new client as a product for you as well. Like think about in the sea of other choices that are out there, are they even aware of what you have out there? And again, for most people that are just starting out on Facebook or have been, marketing on Facebook for a few years, your audience probably isn't aware of your product or service right now. So again, that pushes you more towards the right side of the screen. And this is kind of where we get into the audience, like really understanding where is your audience, and again, connecting it to the frameworks that I'll cover in just a second. This is where we kind of start to think about our audience as a person. Like, okay, like if we just put out, like, what does the prospect know about herself? Does she know she has a problem? Again, like if you kind of think about, various different, whether it's in the health or personal development or whatever it is, like, do they have a great sense of, what specifically they're dealing with? And, even if they do, what are some of those false beliefs that they might have out there? What are people suggesting? And how can your process maybe be uniquely differentiated with that? And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. I'll kind of go through some of the frameworks that we're thinking about. But like, okay, does the prospects really know what the key source of their problem is? Again, they might have a bunch of other people telling them what their problem is, but it might be a misdiagnosis. It might be something that they have a false belief around, something their parents told them when they were growing up, all those kind of things as we go through it. So there's so many different levels that come through it, everything from weight loss to personal development, to education. All those things have their share of false beliefs. And again, your prospects might not know exactly what they're dealing with. And then, as we get through that, if they do have a great idea of what their problem is, do they have a great sense of what the possible solutions? Have they made that connection yet? Have they done that research? Have they gone out there and seen what else is out there? And this is really comes down to like, okay, as you do your research for your competitive landscape, like who are some of those big names that are out there, and what are they promoting? How are they advertising? How do they think about their audience? So you might have big brands out there that are going more towards that more aware framework, because again, they've been advertising for a while. But again, use your competition as a great way, as a starting point, even before you start to think about your own audience. Take a look at, what messages are they putting out to the audience, and what seems to be working based on the Facebook ad library. And then we can kind of slot people within what we're doing. So again, going back to the various different frameworks, again, this is from Great Leads, but like most aware, your prospect knows you and your product well. Again, these are people that are on your email list, past clients, all those kind of things. Product aware, your prospect knows what you sell, but isn't sure if it's right for them. They know your name. They know the benefits you claim. These are buyers sitting on the fence. So again, if you are one of those brands that, again, has been advertising for a while, that's where, you'd be more product aware. But again, most people make the assumption that, oh yeah, these people already know who I am, because I've been doing all these social media posts and all those kind of things. But realize for a lot of your audience, they've never heard of you before, even if you've been doing all that stuff. So don't make that assumption that even based on all the activity that you have out there, that your audience actually knows who you are. Just take it from an audience perspective. Like they're just being inundated with ads on a daily basis based on all the different problems that they have across their scope. So don't assume that they've seen yours and paid full attention to it. So again, we get to kind of the middle of the chart, solution aware. Your product knows the results she wants, but not the product that provides it. So she needs some education along the way, only has the outcome in mind. As we go further along the awareness, like problem aware, this is kind of like where a lot of the old classic ads have really come through in terms of the headlines, things like that. Your prospect senses he has a problem, but doesn't know there's a solution. They have hope that they can get through it. Product aware only has worry. They know something's not working, but they don't know yet that there's a way to fix it. So again, even within that problem aware or solution aware, the solution aware has hope. Problem aware just has kind of that worry or anxiety about the problem that they, again, maybe just got diagnosed about or just starting to feel the symptoms of that. And then again, completely unaware. They have no knowledge of anything except, like perhaps their own identity or opinion. So again, they might not even realize they have a problem until you bring it to their attention. And then you obviously have to bring through your solution on the other side. So that brings us to kind of the same chart on the other side. Again, how do we kind of create Facebook ads that kind of speak to our audience? Again, let's assume for your audience, especially if you're advertising for the very first time, or you've only been advertising for a few years now, most of your audience is either going to be in solution aware, problem aware, or unaware. So I've kind of laid out, I've got 6 different frameworks. Again, all these frameworks are covered within fullconfidenceads.com. I lay out what each of them mean and things like that. But it just gives you a sense of like, okay, like based on where your audience sits, these are the frameworks that you should start with. One of the biggest things that people struggle with is like, how do I even start the process of writing a Facebook ad that's going to convert? And these frameworks kind of give you various different ways. Like within fullconfidenceads.com, I give you examples of what various different businesses and coaches are using across different industries. So you have an idea of how they're being utilized. So you have that as the framework, use that as inspiration. And then I kind of lay out like, okay, section by section. Some of them are short copy, some of them are longer copy. But it gives you a starting point of like, okay, like, again, my Facebook ads aren't working, or maybe they're not meeting the potential that I want them to. I can use some of these frameworks to test out maybe a different ad. If you've had to turn off your ads because they're just too expensive, here's another way to a different starting point to start a brand new ad that speaks to your specific audience along the way. So if we think about like, somebody that's completely unaware of their problem, hasn't even really think about about the solution. They have no idea who you are. Again, hero's journey is a great way to start. This could be talking a little bit about your story of transformation as a coach. This typically happens all the time. Or it could be going out to one of your success stories. So if you've had a past client that, again, maybe recognized the problem that they had, went through this period of transformation, searching for all these answers. They found you as the coach, and you talk through all the solutions you were able to deliver. That's a great way to kind of get not only introduce you, but to get people into your world, let people know how you're uniquely differentiated. It's going to be a longer type of ad, but that's a great way to start, because again, if somebody's just meeting you for the first time, you kind of have a little bit of work to do, not only to introduce yourself, but to build up credibility, but also to mention like why your coaching services are uniquely differentiated in the full scope of all the other options that they have out there. And that sets you up very well for a webinar, a lead magnet, a sales page, whatever it is along the way. So again, in that first long copy, in that hero's journey story, they get captivated. You kind of capture their emotions. You give them hope of a possible solution. So we're kind of moving them along the awareness spectrum really quickly. Number one, we're making them more aware of your genius and your expertise, but we can also educate them on their problem. We can start to tease out a little bit more of your solution and get them closer to being product aware by the end of your webinar or whatever it is that helps them lead them along the way. And again, as you think about these awareness spectrums, the more work, like again, if you're going out unaware audience in terms of unaware of their problem or unaware of your solution, not only in terms of that Facebook ad, but in that secondary thing, whether it's a webinar or a lead magnet or a book or whatever it is, know that you have a little bit more work to do in terms of not only educating your audience, but providing proof around your expertise and just moving them along the spectrum until they get to that most aware phase. So again, hero's journey, longer type ad, but really using your own story or success story as kind of your asset and a way to introduce yourself, build up credibility, and kind of introduce your unique mechanism, your unique formula for getting people results, and then getting to that secondary step where you're doing more of that work, kind of think about it as kind of that dating process. So like maybe in a longer form Facebook ad, they go into a webinar where you spend half an hour, 45 minutes going through your process and kind of really dialing up people. So again, they go from having no idea who you are or even any idea of what their problem is after viewing your Facebook ad, going through your 45-minute webinar. They have a good sense of where they are. You've kind of introduced them. You built up that know, like, and trust, and they're ready to, either sign up directly for your membership or your program or your course, or to sign up for a sales call, or you can kind of qualify them along the way. So again, you've done a little bit of the heavy lifting in a very short period of time for somebody that's never heard of you before. And then as we kind of move along the spectrum, again, as people are more aware of their problems, again, as we move into problem aware, that kind of introduces the framework that I call challenging conventional wisdom. So again, somebody might think they have a specific problem that's caused by something, and you can kind of, whether it's weight loss or, various different examples, you can kind of knock down that false belief. You can say, like, you think your problem is being caused by X, but it's really being caused by Y. And the fact that they're just becoming aware of what their problem is, and you're kind of knocking down some of those expert opinions that they might have heard from their doctor or some other expert. And you're saying, like, actually, all those expert opinions that you've heard is completely wrong. And here's what's really causing your problem. And here's how I can kind of accelerate your results and get you to a solution really quickly. And again, this doesn't have to be, compared to the hero's journey. This can be a really short ad, because again, we are just kind of knocking them off. We're just trying to knock them off their chair. Like, we want to kind of challenge what they might have just gotten awareness of what their problem is, or maybe the early stages of just trying to figure it out. If we can kind of knock down some of those false beliefs, get them thinking in the wrong, in a different direction, give them a lot of curiosity, and getting them to our next bit, getting them to click through, that can make a big difference in terms of not only knocking down those other options and telling them why they're flawed, but kind of differentiating your solution and getting them to the other side. Then as we move along, again, as somebody becomes more aware of what the problem is, they're starting to do some research on their solution. That's introduces the framework that I call, yeah, I'm talking to you. And one of the best parts, and what we've seen, especially with the Apple iOS changes, but also with the detailed targeting change that came through a couple of weeks ago, is being more specific in your Facebook ad is a great way to really call out that specific part of the audience that you focus on. And if you could do that in your Facebook ad, again, it doesn't have to be a long form Facebook ad. You can do it within a few sentences, really call out specifically the audience that you serve, or maybe the problem that you solve along the way. Can be a great way to, again, catch somebody's attention, let them know that they're in the right place, and that you can kind of introduce your solution either within the Facebook ad itself, or in that click through to the landing page, sales page, webinar, whatever you're using along the way. Then as we move along, getting to solution aware. So again, somebody has an awareness of what their problem is, they're doing the research, they're trying to solve it, they're looking at all their options, they're making these lists. This is where, again, in a very short or a little bit longer ad, we can kind of call out that problem that they have, again, being really specific. So we stop them in their tracks in their scroll if you're calling out that specific problem that's been keeping them up at night, and immediately offering your solution and kind of teasing out all the benefits of that. And again, moving them, very quickly along that awareness spectrum. Again, it might be a problem that they have just been, lying awake at night thinking about, and all of a sudden they see in their news feed you calling out their specific problem and offering kind of this congruent solution that seems to make a great deal of sense to them. Kind of greases the wheels to them signing up on the next page in terms of your solution as you go along. And then as you do more and more marketing, that's where people are going to start to get to know you. You're going to build up these success stories, and that makes it a little bit easier. And in terms of the ad copy as well, how can we make it even shorter? That gets to kind of that product aware. So again, right away, they have an idea of who you are. You can kind of lead with some of those benefits right away. You can kind of put out that specific promise around your product. So that's why I call the icing on the cake. You're really leading with all the, kind of the cherry on top for them, and getting them really curious and getting them to that next page really quickly. But we're really just kind of showing them, like, look how amazing this looks. Like, you have to take advantage of this. And again, it just helps to have more awareness of what your solution is, so that they can kind of differentiate your solution among the various others that are out there. Again, it can be a really short ad because they have some familiarity with you altogether. You're just really leading with the benefits and getting them to take that final step to get over those maybe final objections or questions that they might have to finally buy your product. And then again, as we get to most aware, these are kind of the big brands that are advertising all the time, but this can be also to you. If you go out to your specific customer list or email list and you have a brand new offer, you might be able to go out with them, kind of lean on that credibility and trust that you've already established. Again, the offer that I call "Where do I sign?" So it's just a matter of you putting the right offer in front of them. You've already built up, you already have a relationship. It's just a matter of like, okay, do I have the right offer in front of the right past client? And they're ready to sign up right away. Again, I use the example of, everybody, all those Apple users that have been happy users for a long period of time. When they come out with a new iPhone or new MacBook or whatever it is, it's just a matter of like, yeah, I've got to have that. Like, how soon can you deliver it to me? So makes it really easy, really short form in terms of that ad as we go along. So again, 6 different frameworks to kind of think about that. But again, you kind of have to do some research, take a look at your competitors. How do they kind of think about the spectrum here in terms of problems? And again, as you get to know these frameworks and go through them, what you're going to do is, especially looking at your competitors, but also the ads that are coming through in your Facebook news feed, you're going to be able to see like, okay, among these 6 frameworks, kind of covers all the ads that you're seeing. You can kind of diagnose, like you can actually point them out, and you're like, yeah, that's okay. They're doing icing on the cake here. They're doing, yeah, I'm talking to you, those kind of things. So it's just going to make it really relevant. Obviously, there's ads that go outside these frameworks, but these are the ones that you see most often. Again, in fullconfidenceads.com, I show you a bunch of different examples across industries. So you'll see that it's not just within personal development or health or things like that, where each of them are using these frameworks kind of across the board, kind of knocking down some of these trends. But again, the most powerful ads that you're going to see, the ones that are going to convert the most, is really having an understanding of who your audience is and really answering like, what's in it for me, and kind of meeting your customer exactly where they are. Again, most times that your ads aren't working, or maybe your costs are too high, it's probably because you are a little bit further on this side. You're making the assumption that your client, this cold audience on Facebook already knows who you are, or they're already aware of your product, and you're not doing enough in that Facebook ad copy, or you're not taking the right approach that really catches their attention and gets them to that secondary step. And again, in your analytics, you might find that, okay, I'm getting enough of a click-through rate, but that secondary page, whatever it is, a sales page, webinar, whatever strategy you're using, isn't leading to enough knocking down objections, answering enough questions, again, moving them along the awareness spectrum where they're ready to sign up. So again, once they click through the ad, that's very important too, to really think about like, okay, how do I move them through so they don't have any other questions, objections, anything that's kind of keeping them from putting their credit card down and signing up right away. So again, kind of think about that, not only in terms of the Facebook ad, but that secondary step that you're really pointing people to in terms of what they're trying to do. And that's why again, for more of those unaware audiences, and that's where most coaches are going to start out with. If you're just starting out Facebook ads for the first time, or if you've only been advertising for a few years, know that you have a lot more work to do. You have a lot more of that dating process, that introduction. So again, that secondary step, that's where you kind of see a lot more of those coaches going out there and doing webinars or master classes or those kind of things, because they know they have a lot more work to do to kind of introduce themselves, build up credibility, let the audience know why their solution is differentiated from all the other coaches that are out there, to price anchor their services as well. So really important to kind of think about like, okay, where does my audience sit, and how can I create ads, but also a strategy that makes it really profitable for me to run ads from day one. And again, within fullconfidenceads.com, I walk you through all that within really simple videos that, again, if you're within Business Manager and you're creating ads for the first time, I'll let you know which specific buttons to push, the context for them. So it makes it really easy. You can start and stop those videos along the way. So if this was helpful, hit that like button on whichever platform you're on. Let me know in the comments, where do you think your audience sits, and what are some of the frameworks that you are going to start out with if you're just running ads for the first time, or what other frameworks might you test out to go against some of the existing ads that are running right now, whether they're working well or not.
and really taking it from an audience perspective and thinking about it in that way. So one of the things tomorrow I'm going to talk about is, say that you don't have a huge budget. Say you don't have $10,000 to hire somebody to run your ads for you, or maybe you don't have the ad spend to spend $50 a day to run a conversion ad. Tomorrow I'm going to walk you through how I can, how there's a cheaper option to get started, start building your audience, again, a warmer audience on Facebook, and potentially get to the point where you get that exposure, but you don't have to kind of break the bank to do it along the way. A few dollars a day will get you there in terms of doing that. So check that out tomorrow in terms of the live. And with that, again, let me know in the comments, anything that you have in terms of feedback.